The sun was beginning to sink low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the harsh concrete walls of the military checkpoint, where no civilians were allowed beyond the towering gate. The soldiers stood rigid as the dry wind whispered through, the barren landscape carrying with it an uneasy silence that felt heavier than the weight of their armor. The gate itself was a fortress, a cold barrier between the known world and the mystery that lay beyond. And today, something was different. Something unsettling that no one could quite place. The watch commander paced nervously, his eyes darting from the thick envelope in the hands of the Admiral to the dense forest that lined the far edges of the sector. The Admiral was a man of few words, but his presence alone commanded respect, his uniform spotless, his medals gleaming even as the dusk painted his face with shadows. The officers whispered quietly among themselves, wondering why this mission had been suddenly changed, why this woman no one had ever heard of was now in charge of the entire sector. They had all served under many commanders, but this was unlike anything they had seen before. The gate guards exchanged glances, their hands resting on their rifles, a silent communication, passing between them as if warning each other that the rules were about to change forever. The Admiral strode forward, his boots clicking against the steel grate beneath his feet, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority when he spoke. No civilians are allowed past this gate. But then his words cut through the cold air with a new command. She commands this entire sector. The sentence hung there like a challenge, an impossible order that no one could understand. Yet everyone was forced to obey. The soldiers saluted uncertainly as the Admiral signaled for the gate to open. Slowly, grinding metal echoed through the empty air and revealed a glimpse of what lay beyond the barrier. A landscape of high-tech installations camouflaged. Among the dense trees, strange humming machines and shadows that moved without explanation. The sector was alive with secrets. Secrets that the world outside was not meant to know. Secrets that could change everything if uncovered. A young officer, named Jensen, who had only recently been assigned to the sector, felt a chill crawl up his spine as he looked past the gate. The air beyond seemed different, heavier charged with a tension that made his skin prickle. He tried to shake off the feeling, reminding himself this was just a military base. But deep down, he knew this was more than just a simple command post. Something was waiting here, and it was watching them now. The Admiral turned to the small group of trusted officers gathered nearby and said, "You will meet her. You will follow her orders without question." The woman behind the gate was not just a commander. She was a mystery, and no one knew what her next move would be. The officers nodded, but behind their eyes lay fear and curiosity, intertwined like twisted vines. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the gate finally closed, sealing off the outside world and plunging the sector into a twilight realm where every sound seemed amplified. Every footstep echoed through the empty corridors, and every shadow could hide a secret. The soldiers went about their duties, but their minds were elsewhere, wondering who this commander was and why she had been given such immense power so suddenly. The Admiral stayed late that night poring over maps and reports, his fingers tracing routes that led deeper into the sector, each path more convoluted than the last. His face was etched with worry lines that no rank could erase. Something was coming. Something that the commanders had only glimpsed in the darkest corners of intelligence briefings. But now it was real, and it was here. Far beyond the walls, a figure watched from the tree line, eyes glinting in the moonlight hidden beneath a hood. The figure was silent, but their presence was undeniable. A silent witness to the unfolding events, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their allegiance was unknown, their intentions a puzzle wrapped in shadows and danger. Inside the command center, the hum of machines filled the air screens flickered, showing data streams and encrypted messages. The new commander had yet to make her first appearance, but her influence was already felt in every decision made and every order given. Jensen could sense a change in the atmosphere, a shift that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The question that burned inside him was not who she was, but what she wanted, and why it was so important that no one else could be trusted with this sector. The night grew colder, and the stars hidden. Behind thick clouds, the perfect cover for secrets to grow and for plans to unfold. Plans that would challenge everything the soldiers thought they knew about loyalty, power, and survival. The Admiral leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, but his mind racing with possibilities as the first signs of dawn promised a day that would change the sector forever. And just as the clock ticked toward midnight, a distant explosion shattered the stillness. A flash of light far beyond the walls sending a ripple of panic through the guards. The gate, which was supposed to be a symbol of safety, now seemed like a fragile barrier holding back chaos. The Admiral sprang into action, barking orders while Jensen stared toward the horizon, wondering if this was the first sign of a battle. No one was prepared to fight. The story was only beginning, and no one could say for sure if the mysterious commander was the key to salvation, or the spark that would ignite a war with consequences far beyond the sector itself. The question remained unanswered, but one thing was clear. The gate was no longer just a gate, and the woman who commanded this entire sector was about to reveal secrets that would change everything. The morning light filtered weakly through heavy clouds, casting a gray pallor over the sprawling military sector beyond the gate. The base hummed with restless activity as soldiers and officers moved swiftly between shadowed buildings and reinforced bunkers. Jensen stood among them, his heart pounding as he waited for the first meeting with the mysterious commander, whose name was still unknown, but whose power was absolute. The air was thick with anticipation and unease. The Admiral had been clear this was no ordinary meeting. Everyone was to obey without question. But Jensen could feel the eyes of his comrades filled with silent questions and hidden fears. What kind of leader demanded such loyalty without a single word spoken to those under her command? Why was her identity kept, secret even from those closest to the Admiral? The soldiers whispered rumors of a ghost, a woman who could command loyalty through sheer presence alone or worse, a shadow puppet master controlling events from behind a veil of secrecy. The command. Center doors stood heavy and cold as the group was led inside a room filled with blinking consoles and screens that displayed maps, encrypted codes, and streams of data. The atmosphere was tense, a pressure that pressed down on Jensen, making it difficult to breathe. The officers exchanged cautious glances as the door creaked open, and a figure appeared framed by the dim glow of monitors. The room fell silent as all eyes fixed on her. She stepped forward slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. A sharp gaze swept the room, taking in every face as if weighing their worth. Her uniform was simple yet impeccable, her presence undeniable. She spoke at last, her voice low but commanding. "You are now part of something larger than yourselves, a mission that will define the future of this sector and perhaps the entire nation." No one dared interrupt, but Jensen noticed a flicker of doubt in the Admiral's eyes. The commander did not reveal her name, only the details of the threat they faced. An enemy hidden within the shadows, a network of spies, saboteurs, and traitors who had infiltrated the very heart of the military. Her task was to root them out, to protect the sector at all costs. But the real danger was the uncertainty. Who could be trusted when betrayal lurked behind every smile and every handshake? Jensen listened intently as orders were given to tighten security, increase surveillance, and interrogate suspects. The commander promised swift justice and unyielding vigilance, but there was something in her tone that hinted at a deeper secret, a truth she was not yet ready to share. The officers nodded in agreement, but Jensen felt a chill run down his spine, realizing that this mission would test their loyalties in ways none of them could imagine. Outside the command center, the soldiers doubled their patrols and checkpoints were fortified. Yet the sense of paranoia grew stronger as comrades eyed each other with suspicion. The gate that had once symbolized safety now seemed like a cage trapping them inside a powder keg waiting to explode. Jensen caught whispers of meetings held in secret, of alliances formed and broken in the dead of night, but no one knew who was truly in control. Late that evening, Jensen found himself alone, on the observation deck, staring out into the darkened forest beyond the perimeter. Lights flickered among the trees and shadows shifted as if alive with secrets. He felt a presence behind him and turned to see one of the intelligence officers, a woman named Carlson, whose eyes were sharp and calculating. She whispered a warning about a mole inside the sector. Someone close to the commander, someone whose betrayal could destroy them all. The revelation hit Jensen like a blow, his mind racing to connect the dots as fear tightened its grip. The commander's command was absolute, but if the enemy was within, then every order might be a trap, every step forward, a descent into chaos. Carlson urged Jensen to be vigilant, to trust no one, not even those closest to him. The night grew colder, and the sounds of the sector seemed louder, more menacing. Suddenly, an explosion rocked a nearby communications tower, cutting off all external contact. The base plunged into darkness, save for the emergency lights casting eerie glows on the faces of soldiers scrambling to assess the damage. The commander ordered an immediate lockdown and dispatched teams to investigate, but the questions hung heavy in the air. Who had done this and why? Jensen joined one of the squads sent to the site, and as they moved cautiously through the smoke and debris, he glimpsed strange markings on the walls, signs that suggested this was no ordinary attack, but a message from an enemy who knew their weaknesses intimately. The feeling of being hunted intensified, and the trust among the team began to fracture. Back at the command center, the commander convened a crisis meeting, her face unreadable, as she listened to reports and made rapid decisions. She revealed for the first time fragments of her past, a career spent in covert operations, a reputation forged in shadows and silence, but never fully explained. Her presence was both reassuring and terrifying, leaving the officers wondering if they were following a savior or a specter of destruction. As night deepened, the sector became a battleground of suspicion and strategy. Every corner held the possibility of danger, and every voice could conceal deceit. Jensen felt the weight of responsibility press down on him, knowing that the choices made in these dark hours would determine the fate of everyone behind the gate. And just as the clock struck the witching hour, the commander issued a chilling command. "A traitor walks among us, and tonight the hunt begins." Jensen's breath caught in his throat as the room plunged into darkness, and a distant scream echoed through the corridors, a signal that the shadows were closing in and no one would emerge unscathed. The sector was plunged into chaos as the chilling words echoed through the command center. "A traitor walks among us." The soldiers exchanged fearful glances, their eyes wide with disbelief and suspicion. Jensen felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach as every trusted face suddenly seemed a potential enemy. The lockdown orders had turned the sprawling base into a labyrinth of tension, where every shadow could conceal danger and every whisper might be a betrayal. The commander moved through the rooms with calculated calm, her presence a steady anchor amidst the storm. Yet beneath her composed exterior, Jensen sensed a burning intensity, a mind racing through countless possibilities, searching for the unseen foe. The officers scrambled to organize search parties, interrogate suspects, and seal off every possible escape route, but the enemy was elusive, slipping through their grasp. Like smoke, Jensen was assigned to a small unit tasked with investigating a series of breaches that had occurred during the previous nights. Each lead seemed to unravel into dead ends or conflicting evidence, fueling frustration and paranoia. The soldiers grew restless, questioning each other's motives and the loyalty of their comrades. The sector, which had once been a place of discipline, was now a powder keg threatening to ignite at any moment. Amid the turmoil, a cryptic message was intercepted. Through scrambled communications, a series of numbers and letters that seemed meaningless but carried a hidden threat. Jensen's team worked tirelessly, trying to decode the message, suspecting it was a warning from the traitor, or worse, an invitation, to a trap. The hours slipped by with no answers, only the growing sense that time was running out. Meanwhile, the commander convened secret meetings with a select few trusted officers, the Admiral included. Their discussions were hushed and intense, hinting at a plan that required ruthless precision and sacrifices. Yet to be revealed, Jensen was excluded from these briefings, deepening his unease and making him question where his loyalties truly lay. The divide between those in the know and those left in the dark grew wider with each passing hour. Outside the command center, the atmosphere thickened as patrols reported strange noises, movement in the trees, and fleeting glimpses of figures disappearing into the shadows. The perimeter, that once felt secure, now seemed permeable, as if the forest itself was conspiring with the enemy. The soldiers tightened their grips on weapons, eyes scanning the darkness for signs of an attack. One night, as Jensen patrolled the eastern sector, CT stumbled upon a hidden cache of weapons and forged documents that suggested a network of collaborators operating within the base. The discovery sent shockwaves through the ranks, fueling theories that the traitor was not working alone, that this was a coordinated effort to dismantle the sector from within. The question was who and why. Back in the command center, the commander revealed fragments of her own past, hinting at betrayals she had faced and enemies she had outwitted in shadows, long before this mission. Yet she refused to disclose her identity or motivations, fully leaving those around her grasping for understanding. Her cryptic warnings about trust and survival kept everyone on edge, and Jensen wondered if she was preparing them for a truth far darker than any had imagined. The tension reached a breaking point when another explosion rocked the northern supply depot, cutting off vital resources and plunging part of the base into chaos. Soldiers scrambled to contain the damage and search for survivors, but the damage was severe and morale plummeted. The commander ordered an immediate counterstrike against suspected collaborators, intensifying the hunt and sowing distrust among the troops. Jensen found himself torn between duty and doubt, questioning if the war was truly external, or if the real enemy was the fear consuming them all. Slowly, he began to piece together clues from intercepted messages, surveillance footage, and whispered conversations, forming a fragile theory that the traitor was someone within their closest circles, someone who had intimate knowledge of the sector's defenses and weaknesses. As the days bled into nights, the sector transformed into a stage for a deadly game where every move counted and every mistake could be fatal. The commander's orders grew more severe, her tactics ruthless as she pushed her team to the edge and beyond. She demanded absolute loyalty and results, no matter the cost, and the soldiers obeyed, fearing the consequences of failure in a desperate bid to uncover the truth. Jensen risked everything and confronted a trusted officer only to be met with denial and threats. The encounter left him shaken, but more determined than ever to expose the betrayal and protect the sector, even if it meant standing against those he once called allies. The lines between friend and foe blurred, leaving a dangerous void where trust could no longer survive. And just as the sector seemed to teeter on the brink of collapse, the commander announced a daring operation to flush out the traitor and reclaim control, a risky plan involving deception, infiltration, and sacrifice that would either save them all or doom the sector to destruction. Jensen swallowed hard, knowing that this mission would change everything, and that not everyone would live to see the dawn. The countdown had begun, and the shadows were closing in. The night had fallen heavy and thick like a suffocating blanket over the sector as the commander gathered her forces for the operation that would decide their fate. The air was charged with silent tension, the kind that clings to skin and rattles nerves. Jensen stood among the ranks, his heart hammering in his chest, the weight of every choice pressing down on him as he prepared to step into the unknown. The darkness outside seemed endless, a void swallowing sound and light. But inside the base, the storm was only just beginning. Orders crackled through the radios, whispers of a plan so risky it bordered on madness. A bold strike designed to root out the traitor and destroy the enemy network lurking in the shadows. It required precision, courage, and sacrifices no one could predict. The commander briefed her officers in low voices, outlining every detail, the timing, the contingencies, the possible outcomes. Her eyes held a fierce determination that brooked no dissent. Yet beneath that fire was a flicker of something deeper, a burden carried alone. The teams moved out under cover of darkness, slipping silently through corridors and forest paths. Their breaths came shallow and fast, every snap of twig, every rustle of leaves setting their nerves ablaze. Jensen led one of the squads tasked with infiltrating a suspected safe house where vital intelligence was believed to be hidden. The operation was a gamble, and as they advanced, he could not shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap inside the safe house. The rooms were eerily quiet, shadows pooling in corners like waiting beasts. The team swept through, checking every nook and cranny, their flashlights cutting arcs through the gloom, until they found a hidden compartment behind a false panel, stuffed with documents, encrypted drives, and weapons marked with the insignia of the sector. But before they could secure the evidence, a faint sound froze them in place, footsteps echoing in the hall outside. The tension snapped like a wire, and the team braced for confrontation. The door burst open, and figures clad in black stormed in gunfire, erupted in the confined space bullets tearing through walls and bodies. Chaos exploded as Jensen and his team fought desperately to hold their ground, but the enemy was prepared, vicious and relentless. The firefight dragged on, a blur of noise, pain, and survival instincts pushed to the limit amid the carnage. Jensen caught sight of a familiar face, a trusted officer he had trained with, a man whose smile had once been a symbol of friendship, now twisted into a mask of betrayal. The shock was paralyzing, but there was no time for hesitation. The enemy was within, and the fight for the sector's soul had turned personal.